tak Prabhupada ma vždy prichytil.
So one time in, I think it was February of 1977, we were in Mayapur.
To bolo v Mayapure, február 77.
And I was in Prabhupada's room.
Ja som vo Prabhupadovej izbe.
He was speaking with Guru Kripa about some managerial affair.
A rozprával sa s Guru Kripom o manažerských záležitostiach.
And I was sitting at the back of the room.
A ja som sedel vzadu v izbe.
Of course, that, you know, Prabhupada's rooms in Mayapur are quite small.
Samozrejme, Prabhupadové izby v Mayapure sú dosť malé.
Anyway, because it didn't directly concern me, I wasn't paying much attention.
A v každom prípade, pretože priamo sa ku mne nevzťahoval, tak ja som tomu rozhovoru nevenoval nejak veľa pozornosti.
So I just happened to find in my waistcoat pocket a toothpick.
A ja som v mojom vrecku našiel špárátko.
So without really thinking, I took it out and started poking my teeth.
A bez skutočnosti, že by som nad tým popremýšľal, tak som ho vyťahol a začal som si špárať zubom.
So Prabhupada was talking with Guru Kripa.
A Prabhupada sa rozprával s Guru Kripom.
He had one eye on him.
A jedno oko sa smerovalo k nemu.
And he had his other eye on me.
A druhé oko smerovalo ku mne.
It's the same thing with the salt pot, right? I told about last night. Prabhupada was talking with some sannyasi, but at the same time he could see everything that was going on.
A to isté som včera hovoril, že Prabhupada pri nejakej príležitosti hovoril a jedným okom udržiaval oko na sannyasinovi a druhým okom sa díval na ostatných.
So he suddenly stopped.
A zrazu prestal.
Why are you not paying attention?
Prečo nedávaš pozor?
He said a little annoyed.
Trošku nahnevané povedal.
This is not just for him, it is for you also.
Toto nie je len pre neho, toto je tiež pre teba.
And what is this?
A čo je toto?
You're always playing with your nose and fingers.
Ty sa neustále zabáva so svojím nosom a prstami.
This is your bad habit.
To je tvoj zlý zlozvyk.
Go and wash your hands.
A neumývaš. Chod si mi ruky.
So embarrassed, I went out to the bathroom.
Tak v rozpakoch ja som išiel do kúpeľne.
And when I came back into Prabhupada's room, Guru Kripa had gone.
A keď som sa vrátil do Prabhupadovej izby, tak Guru Kripa tam už nebol.
So I told Srila Prabhupada that somehow, although I know what the standards of cleanliness are,
a tak som povedal Srila Prabhupadovi, hoci aj viem, aké sú štandardy čistotnosti.
it just doesn't come naturally.
Tak jednoducho to neprichádza prirodzene.
Prabhupada laughed and he agreed that for a Westerner to be clean is artificial.
Prabhupada sa zasmial a súhlasil, že pre západňarov byť čistý je niečo umelé.
Still he said, with practice it will come.
Ale napriek tomu povedal, že praktikovaním to príde.
So, a few things about Prabhupada's own personal standards.
A pár vecí ohľadne Prabhupadovom o osobnom štandarde.
So, 1976, first day of January, Tamal Krishna Maharaj arrived early in the morning in Bombay.
V 76. prvý deň januára Tamal Krishna Maharaj prišiel ráno do Bombayu.
And really that was my first dealings with Maharaj.
A to bol ozaj prvýkrát, čo som prišiel do styku s Maharajom.
I never really, he was always in America, I was always in Australia, and I never really had any service with him.
A on bol väčšinou v Amerike, ja v Austrálii a nemal som s ním nejakú službu predtým.
So, in the morning we all flew down to Madras.
A ráno sme potom hneď leteli spolu do Madrasu.
And Prabhupada took his breakfast on the aeroplane.
A Prabhupada prijal raňajky na lietadle.
So whenever we traveled, if we were flying during, a meal time,
a keď sme ako cestovali, tak väčšinou to bolo počas obeda.
We'd take a tiffin box.
Keď ako to bolo aj počas obeda, tak sme si zobrali so sebou nádoby s jedlom.
And we'd have Prabhupada's meal already prepared in the different sections.
A Prabhupadové jedlo tam bolo v tých rôznych sekciách toho obedára pripravené.
So I served Prabhupada his breakfast on the plane.
A ja som slúžil Prabhupádovi raňajky v lietadle.
When Prabhupada finished,
Keď Prabhupád skončil,
he washed his fingers with water from his glass.
tak si umyl prsty s vodou z pohára.
Then he took a sip from the glass.
A potom si srkol z toho pohára.
Tamal Krishna was closely observing Srila Prabhupada eat.
A Tamal Krishna tak veľmi zblízka sa pozeral, ako Šrila Prabhupada je.
Then he turned to me and he commented,
Potom sa obrátil ku mne a komentoval.
just see how expert Srila Prabhupada is.
Pozri, aký expert je Šrila Prabhupada.
He washed his hands first and then he drank from the cup.
On si najskôr umyl ruky, až potom sa napil z pohára.
If he had drunk from the glass first, the water would have been contaminated.
Ak by sa najskôr napil z toho pohára, tak voda už by bola kontaminovaná.
Then he would not have been able to wash his hands with it.
A potom by si už nebol schopný s tým umyť ruky.
So small things like that, but everything Prabhupada did was very precise and meaningful.
Takže také malé veci, ale všetko, čo Prabhupada robil, bolo veľmi presné a malo to význam.
So Prabhupada you never saw Prabhupada touch a glass to his lips.
Vy ste nikdy nevideli Prabhupádu, aby sa dotkol pohára perami.
He was famous in ISKCON, he would tip his head back and pour the water in, but never touch the glass to his lips.
To bolo známe v ISKCONe, on si zaklonil hlavu a nalial tam vodu, ale nikdy sa nedotkol toho pohára perami.
At least in my experience, I never saw him put his fingers in his mouth, even when he was eating.
A pri najmenšom ja som mal tú skúsenosť, že on keď jedol, tak nikdy si nedal ani prsty do
He
úst.
would get a little prasadam and kind of throw it in.
On zobral trošku prasadam a hodil si ich do
You never saw him lick his fingers when he finished them.
Ja som ho nikdy nevidel, aby si oblizoval prsty, keď skončil jedenie.
So, okay, a few things now. That's quite a few things about, food and cleanliness.
Takže trošku ešte veci ohľadne jedla a čistotnosti.
Now a bit about bathing.
Ako to sme mali. A teraz niečo ohľadne kúpania.
So I remember there was one letter that came out. It's not in the folio, and I don't know why, but I think about 74 or 75. I remember there was a letter that came out about the standards for bathing.
Takže ja si pamätám, okolo 70 z nás si pamätajú o dopise, nie vo folii, ale bol to dopis ohľadne štandardu kúpania.
And in that letter, Prabhupada said that a sannyasi bathes 3 times a day.
A v tom dopise Prabhupada sa zmienuje, že saniasi sa kúpe 3-krát denne.
And the householder bathes twice a day.
A hospodár 2-krát denne.
And the brahmacharis once a day.
A brahmačari raz.
And I remember when I heard that, I thought it was back to front.
A keď ja si pamätám, že keď som to počul, tak som si myslel, že to bolo naopak.
In my back to front logic.
Mojej ako pokrútenej, prevrátenej logike.
I was thinking, well, a sannyasi is the most pure.
Ja som si myslel, že saniasi je ten najčistejší.
So why do they need to bathe 3 times a day?
Prečo sa potrebuje kúpať 3-krát
They
denne?
only need to bathe once a day.
On potrebuje sa okúpať iba raz denne.
And the householders, of course, are in the middle, so no difference there.
A samozrejme hospodár je v strede, takže tam by to nebol rozdiel.
You bathe when you get up, you go out, you work, you come back, so you get clean again.
Čiže ráno sa okúpe a potom sa vráti z práci.
And I was thinking the brahmacharis, they're well known for being muchi.
Brahmačari, oni sú známi dobre, že sú muči.
So they need to bathe 3 times a day,
Tak
right?
oni potrebujú sa kúpať 3-krát denne.
So of course, what I didn't realize was that the reason why the sannyasis are pure is because they bathe 3 times a day.
Ale samozrejme, že tá príčina, prečo saniasi je čistý, je preto, že sa kúpe 3-krát denne.
In other words, the state of your consciousness will be reflected in your activities.
Inými slovami, ten stav vášho vedomia sa bude odrážať vo vašich činnostiach.
So if your consciousness is pure, then you'll automatically bathe 3 times a day.
Ak vaše vedomie je čisté, tak potom automaticky sa budete kúpať 3-krát denne.
And because the brahmacharis are not very mindful, they only bathe once a day.
A pretože brahmačári nie sú veľmi ako premýšľali, tak sa kúpu, alebo nie sú si vedomí veci, tak sa budú kúpať iba raz denne.
Anyway, it was the general standard in ISKCON that everybody would bathe twice a day.
Takže v každom prípade to bol taký všeobecný štandard v ISKCONe, že každý sa dvakrát denne.
A couple of letters that I found over the
A našiel som tu
different
zopár
years, just that
dopisov,
Prabhupada mentions there.
kde toto Prabhupada za tie roky nejak zmienuje.
So this is from Prabhupada to Hanuman Prasad Podar, who was a big businessman in India.
A toto je z dopisu od Prabhupádu Hanuman Prasad Podarovi, veľký.
This is the 5th of February 1970.
To bolo v februári 1970.
He said, "We shall touch the deity altar and the deity in a very clean condition."
A on hovorí, že my sa budeme dotýkať božstiev a oltáru vo veľmi čistom stave.
After taking bath and washing the mouth nicely.
Potom, ako sme sa okúpali a dobre si upláchli ústa.
Practice washing hands after eating.
A praktikujte umývanie rúk po jedení.
And wash with soap and water after toilet.
A umývajte si s mydlom a vodou po toalete.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Čistotnosť je hneď zbožnosti.
So this point should be very carefully observed.
A tento bod by mal byť veľmi opatrne, pozorne nasledovaný.
Then you will advance very quickly to the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness.
A potom veľmi rýchlo pokročíte k dokonalému stavu vedomia Krišny.
Then another letter around the same time, this is April the 20th, 1970.
A potom ďalší dopis, to je v apríli, približne ten istý čas, v 70. roku.
This is to Kanchana Bala Dasi.
Je Kanchana Bala Dasi.
Instruct the newly initiated Brahmins about cleanliness.
Pouč novo zasvetených brahmanov ohľadne čistotnosti.
Taking bath 3 times daily.
Umývajte sa 3-krát denne.
And taking bath each time after passing stool.
A vždy potom, ako idete na veľkú toaletu.
Cleanliness within and without, that is very important for Brahminical life.
Čistotnosť zvonku a znútra je veľmi dôležitá pre brahmanický život.
So, okay, so with Srila Prabhupada, when I joined Prabhupada, of course he was 80 years old.
Keď ja som sa pripojil, tak Prabhupada mal 80 rokov.
And he had to make some changes in his own routine, of course.
A musel už robiť nejaké zmeny v jeho rutine.
And Prabhupada bathed once a day.
A Prabhupada sa kúpal raz denne.
Yeah, that was for various reasons. Health was one of the main ones.
A pre rôzne príčiny toto bolo a zdravie bola jedna z nich.
Because all these rules and regulations, fasting standards and all these kinds of things, they were applicable in normal circumstances.
Lebo všetky takéto regulácie, ako napríklad pôstenie a tieto veci, tak oni sa používali pri normálnom štandarde ako okolnosti.
Just like in the Hari Bhakti Vilas.
Ako napríklad Hari Bhakti Vilas.
It mentions there that fasting should be done very strictly.
Je zmienené, že pôstenie má byť robené veľmi striktne.
But if you're under 8 years old,
ale keď máte menej ako 8 rokov,
or you're over 80 years old,
alebo viac ako 80,
then the rules don't apply.
Tak potom tie pokyny sa nepoužívajú.
Yeah. So Prabhupada had to adjust his schedule, especially after he had his heart attack in 1967.
A Prabhupada potom si musel upraviť už svoj plán, špeciálne potom, ako mal srdcový infarkt v 77.
Yeah. So Shrudakirti, in his book What is the Difficulty?
A Shrudakirti v knihe Kde je problém?
He mentioned how Srila Prabhupada, even when he was traveling, was very strictly keeping to his schedule.
On sa zmienuje, ako Srila Prabhupada dokonca aj keď cestoval, tak veľmi striktne dodržiaval svoj plán.
And even when they were traveling, there was one incident that he mentions from when they were going through Thailand.
A dokonca aj keď cestovali, tak zmieňuje sa o jednom incidente, že išli na toaletu.
So he said, Prabhupada distributed his mercy without distinction.
A hovorí, Prabhupada rozdával svoju milosť bez rozlišovania.
That is the kindness of the pure devotee.
A to je láskavosť čistého daného.
On a flight from India going to the west,
Na lete z Indii na západ,
we had a 2-hour stopover at the Bangkok airport.
tak sme mali 2-hodinovú zastávku na letisku v Bangkoku.
Oni šli do Tajska, nie na toaletu. Ty sme na toaletu.
2-hour stopover in the Bangkok airport.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, got it?
Bangkok je v Thajsku.
And they had to wait in the transit area.
A museli čakať v tej nejakej oblasti vyhradenej.
Prabhupada told Shrudakirti, get my things.
A Prabhupada povedal Shrudakirtimu, dones mi moje veci.
I'm going to shower.
Idem sa okúpať.
So I went to, this is Shrudakirti speaking, I went to the baggage area.
A Shrudakirti hovorí, išiel som do oblasti, do tej miestnosti, kde sú kufre.
Opened Srila Prabhupada's bag.
Otvoril som tašku Šrilu Prabhupádu.
Grabbed his lota, towel and a fresh change of clothing.
Zobral som jeho lotu, uterák a čerstvé nové šaty.
Then after a few minutes I returned to his divine grace.
A po pár minútach som sa vrátil k jeho božskej milosti.
Where is the bathroom, he asked.
Kde tu je kúpeľňa, spýtal sa.
So we walked together to the bathroom.
Tak my sme išli spolu do kúpeľne.
But unfortunately there was no bathing facility.
Ale na nešťastie tam nebola možnosť kúpania sa.
But Prabhupada was not easily discouraged.
Ale Prabhupada sa nenechal len tak ľahko odradiť.
For him there was never an obstacle.
Preňho neexistovala nikdy prekážka.
Assessing the situation, he turned to me.
Zhodnotiac situáciu, on sa obrátil ku mne.
He said, all right, I'll take my bath from the sink.
A vraví, OK, ja sa teraz okúpem z umývadla.
So after putting on his gumshoe,
A potom, ako si dal gamšu,
he poured water all over his body again and again,
tak si začal nalievať po celom tele vodu,
using his lota.
používajúc svoju lotu.
He washed with soap and then rinsed.
Umyl sa mydlom a potom sa opláchol.
I watched in amazement as he refreshed himself.
A ja som sa s úžasom díval, ako sa osviežoval.
He was transcendental to all the other activities going on around him.
On bol transcendentálny ku všetkým činnostiam, ktoré sa okolo neho diali.
The attendant watched from the corner of the bathroom.
A ostatní, čo tam boli, tak sa dívali z rohu tej kúpeľne.
He looked disturbed at seeing the extra work that was being created for him.
A
Ten upratovač pozval spoza rohu a zrazu bol taký rozrušený, keď videl, koľko mu tam narobili práce.
He had no idea that he was being benedicted by a Paramahamsa.
on nemal ani ideu o tom, že získal prospech od Paramahamsu.
He was getting the opportunity to do pujari work.
A že získal tú možnosť robiť pujari prácu.
By the causeless mercy of Srila Prabhupada.
Bez príčinou milosťou Šrilu Prabhupády.
I gave Prabhupada a towel when he was finished.
A ja som mu dal uterák, keď už skončil.
He dried himself and dressed in a clean dhoti and kurta.
Osušil sa a obliekol sa do čistého doty a kurty.
The attendant approached me as we were walking out of the bathroom.
A ten upratovač, on prišiel ku mne, keď sme odchádzali z tej kúpeľne.
Although I had no idea what he was saying,
A hoci som nemal ani ideu, čo hovoril,
I knew he was complaining.
tak vedel som, že sa ponosuje.
Prabhupada just laughed.
A Prabhupada sa len smial.
I said as we walked out, Srila Prabhupada, I think is a little upset.
A keď sme vyšli vonku, tak som povedal Prabhupada, myslím si, že trošku je ten pán rozrušený.
Oh well, Prabhupada replied, I had to take a bath.
A Prabhupada, a ja som sa musel okúpať.
I was feeling very tired.
Cítil som sa veľmi unavený.
So Prabhupada was completely, on a different level to everybody else. He just went ahead and did what he needed to do, that was it.
Prabhupada bol úplne na inej úrovni v porovnaní s ostatnými. On jednoducho robil to, čo potreboval robiť.
So a few more bathing pastimes. This was in Haridaspur. This was on March the 20th, 1976.
A zo pár ďalších zábav, čo sa týka kúpania, to bolo marci 76 nejak Haridas jazierku.
So Haridaspur is kind of on the border with Bangladesh.
Okay. Haridas Puri.
Pur. Haridaspur.
It's town? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Takže je to niekde na hraniciach s Bangladešom.
It's just on the Indian side.
Na indickej strane.
And there was one man that came who claimed that the ashram that he had was a place where there was Haridas Thakur had actually come there and spent one night there.
A prišiel tam jeden človek, ktorý tvrdil, že ten ashram, ktorý on má, tak tam Haridas Thakur strávil jednu noc.
So before the festival, a man called Prabhu Swarup had come to Mayapur to see Srila Prabhupada.
A pred festivalom ten človek zavolal niekoho,
Prabhuovi Svarupovi, aby prišli na festival v Mayapur.
Prabhu Swarupovi, aby prišli na festival.
He requested ISKCON's involvement at a place called Haridaspur.
On chcel, aby ISKCON sa do toho nejak zainteresoval a aby to nazývali to miesto Haridaspur.
Prabhupada agreed to visit there with his foreign disciples.
A Prabhupada súhlasil, že to miesto navštíví so svojimi cudzími ako žiakmi zvonka.
So today he left by car early in the morning.
Takže dneska on odišiel na svojom aute skoro ráno.
And the drive took 3 hours.
A tá cesta zabrala 3 hodiny.
Haridaspur is named after Haridas Thakur,
A Haridas Puri je pomenované po Haridas Thakurovi,
the great acharya of the holy name.
veľkom ačariovi svätého mena.
And it commemorated his stay there.
A pripomína jeho to, že tam bol.
So on the basis that Haridas Thakur had gone through and stayed one night in that village,
A tam na tom mieste, kde ako Haridas Thakur zostal jednu noc v tej dedine,
the villagers had renamed the village Haridaspur.
takže vďaka tomu oni premenovali tú dedinu na Haridaspuri.
So the man's ashram turned out to be a small cottage.
A to bola taká malá chalúbka,
Situated on about 6 bighas of land, which is about 1.5 hectares.
a bola umiestnená na ploche zhruba 1,5 hektára.
So it was on the skirts of the village
A bolo to na okraji dediny.
and had a small rundown shrine to Thakur Haridas.
A malo to nejaký malý oblý
Svätyňu to malo, ktorá bola
Svätyňu.
ako dedikovaná.
venovaná Haridasovi.
Prabhupada spent 4 hours in a derelict single room.
A Prabhupada strávil 4 hodiny v takej osobitnej izbe.
A brick building with only gaping holes for a roof, door and windows.
A bola to izba z takých obyčajných tehál a boli tam len nejaké také akože ako diery miesto okien.
And an uneven, overgrown earthen floor.
A podlaha bola len taká nerovnomerná proste zem.
You see that sometimes, and it seems to be a phenomenon, especially in Bengal.
My vidíme niekedy tento jav špeciálne v Bengálsku.
You see somebody starts some building, some house or something, they get two walls up or something and then they leave it.
Že my vidíme, že niekto stavia doma a postaví 2 steny a potom to opustí.
Yeah. Or you see some field and they've got like one section, there's a brick wall there in the middle of the field and nothing else.
Alebo vidíme proste, že sú tam polia a tam vidíme jeden taký múr stehal a nič viac.
So this man had this little brick room. It was a single room.
A tento človek, on mal jednoducho len takúto izbu stehal.
Yeah. No windows, no door, no roof.
Okay, takže neboli tam žiadne okná, žiadna strecha, žiadna podlaha.
A mud floor with weeds growing out of it.
A riastli tam buriny.
And that's what he offered for Prabhupada to stay in.
A to je to, čo ponúkol Prabhupádovi, že kde má zostať.
So we had to hang our chatters over the openings to give him some privacy.
Takže my sme museli tam zavesiť nejaké čadary na ten strop, aby mal trošku súkromia.
He had to take his breakfast, massage, bath and lunch all in the same place.
A musel prijať raňajky, masáž a obed, všetko na tom jednom mieste.
So that was a bit of an experience.
Tak to bol taká skúsenosť.
Sometimes Prabhupada, when we were traveling and it was not possible to keep to his regular schedule, of course he would make some adjustments.
A niekedy, keď sme cestovali a Prabhupád nebol schopný udržať svoj pravidelný program, tak sa urobili nejaké uspôsobenia.
When we left Bombay for Australia on the 18th of April, Prabhupada took his massage at 4 a.m.
Keď sme z Bombay odišli do Austrálie 18. apríla, tak Prabhupáda dostal masáž o 4.
And then of course he had his bath immediately afterwards.
A samozrejme hneď potom sa okúpal.
Then we set off on the trip that took 22 hours.
A potom sme vlastne išli na tú cestu, ktorá trvala 22 hodín.
So sometimes he had to, make those adjustments because it wasn't possible on the aeroplanes, at least in those days, so you could take a bath.
Takže niekedy Prabhupáda urobil takéto uspôsobenia, lebo samozrejme to nebolo možné urobiť v lietadle, špeciálne sa tam okúpať.
So one interesting pastime Prabhupada told us about involving him bathing.
A jedna zaujímavá zábava, Prabhupáda nám hovoril o zahrnutí hymnu.
Bola jedna zábava, o ktorej nám Prabhupád hovoril, ktorá sa týkala kúpania sa.
Yeah. So this was on February the 21st, 1976 in Mayapur.
A to bolo v 76. vo februári 21. v Mayapure.
And Prabhupada was lecturing from the 7th canto.
A Prabhupáda dával lekciu zo 7. spevu.
And he was talking about the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj.
A hovoril o Prahlad Maharážovi.
So there was this particular verse, Modeta Sadorapi Vrishchika Sarpahajya.
Tento verš bol.
Yeah, which is about how even a saintly person is pleased when a snake is killed.
Kde sa hovorí, že dokonca aj svätá osoba je potešená, keď had je zabitý.
So Prabhupada had a little leela with his Gurudev in the Chaitanya mat.
Prabhupáda mal takú malú lílu so svojím Gurudevom v Chaitanya mate.
So he was talking in the class, he said, so long ago, sometime in the year 1933 at the Chaitanya mat.
A hovoril to na tej lekcii, že pred dlhou dobou, niekedy v 33. roku v Chaitanya mate.
So there was a big snake that came out in front of me.
Tak prišiel predo mňa obrovský had.
I was taking my bath.
A ja som sa kúpal.
So everybody was looking what to do.
A každý sa díval, že čo robiť.
So Guru Maharaj was up on the upstairs.
A Guru Maharaj bol na prvom poschodí.
And he immediately ordered, kill it.
A on okamžite dal pokyn, príkaz, zabite ho.
So it was killed.
Tak bol zabitý.
So at that time in 1933 I was a newcomer.
A v tom čase, v roku 1933, som bol nováčik.
So I thought, how is that?
A premýšľal som, ako to je možné.
Guru Maharaj has ordered this snake to be killed.
Guru Maharaj dal príkaz zabiť toho hada.
I was a little surprised.
Ja som bol trošku prekvapený.
But then later on, when I saw this verse, I was very glad.
Ale neskôr, keď som videl tento verš, tak som bol veľmi potešený.
Modeta Sadarapi Vrishchika Sarpahajya. It had remained a doubt
Takže to zostalo ako pochybnosť.
that how Guru Maharaj had ordered a snake to be killed.
Ako to, že Guru Maharaj dal pokyn zabiť toho hada.
But when I read this verse, I was very much pleased.
Ale keď som čítal tento verš, tak som bol veľmi potešený.
That these creatures, or creatures like the snake,
Lebo tieto bytosti, alebo bytosti podobné hadom,
they should not be shown any mercy. No.
im by nemala byť preukazovaná žiadna milosť.
Yeah, so that was a nice bathing pastime from 1933.
Takže to bol moja zábava z kúpania z roku 1933.
Yeah. Then 1976, July 4th, we were in Washington.
A v 76. 4. júla sme boli vo Washingtone.
Because this was the 200th anniversary of American independence.
To bolo 200. výročie americkej nezávislosti.
And July 4th, of course, is their anniversary.
Samozrejme 4. júla je
And
tamto
the
výročie.
devotees had invited Prabhupada to go there because they thought it would be appropriate for Prabhupada to be in the capital of America during the festivities.
A oddaní tam pozvali Prabhupádu, lebo si mysleli, že v takýto deň to bude vhodné, keď bude Prabhupáda v hlavnom meste.
And they had just purchased a new property,
A oni akurát kúpili nové vlastníctvo.
same one that we still have.
Stále toho ešte máme.
But it was a big property, about 13 acres, which is about 5 hectares.
Ale to bolo veľké vlastníctvo, okolo 5 hektárov.
And it had formerly been a kids' summer camp.
A predtým to bolo vlastne také letovisko pre deti.
So there'd been a big like gymnasium building which the devotees turned into a temple.
Bola tam taká veľká budova gymnázia, telocvičňa, ktorú oddaní premenili na chrám.
And there was one kind of medium-sized bungalow, single-story house.
A bol tam taký malý bungalov, taký maličký dom.
And they had to fix that up so that Prabhupada could stay in it.
A ja som ho musel nejak zafixovať, aby tam Prabhupada mohol byť.
So they spent about $40,000 fixing up this house.
A okolo
$45,000 minuli, aby opravili ten
sme minuli.
Which in those days was a huge amount of money.
Čo v tých dňoch bolo obrovské množstvo peňazí.
And the property itself was very expensive. It was like about $700,000.
A celé to vlastníctvo samé bolo veľmi drahé, okolo $700,000.
So at that time it was one of the most expensive properties in ISKCON.
A v tom čase to bolo jedno z tých najdrahších vlastníctiev, čo ISKCON mal.
So anyway, they spent a lot of money to fix this place up. It was quite nice.
Takže oni v každom prípade minuli na to veľké množstvo peňazí, aby to opravili, bolo to docela pekné.
And the bathroom was just off from Prabhupada's bedroom. It's like an attached bath.
A kúpeľňa bola hneď vedľa Prabhupádovej spálne, niečo ako taký prídavok.
So there was a near disaster today, right after Prabhupada's massage.
A po Prabhupádovej masáži sa stala takmer katastrofa.
I had just escorted him to the bathroom to bathe.
Ja som ho doprevádzal akurát do tej kúpeľne, aby sa okúpal.
As I walked back through the bedroom, I heard a tremendous crash.
A keď som išiel tou kúpeľňou, tak som sa pošmykol.
Počul som obrovský
Buchot.
Not knowing what to expect,
Nevediac, čo očakávať.
I rushed to the bathroom door and looked inside.
Ja som behol tam a pozeral som sa dovnútra.
Srila Prabhupada was standing in the bath at the opposite end of the room.
A Srila Prabhupada stál v tej kúpeľni na tej opačnej strane.
Looking concerned and surprised.
A pozerajúc sa s veľkým takým prekvapením a záujmom.
I looked down.
A pozrel som sa dole.
In the gap between us,
A tam bola taká jama medzi nami.
the entire
Priestor.
the entire floor was covered with thousands of shards of shattered glass.
A celá podlaha bola pokrytá tisíckami takých úlomkov rozbitého skla.
Shocked, I realized that I was looking at Srila Prabhupada through the now empty shower screen door.
A šokovaný ja som pochopil, že sa dívam na Prabhupádu cez teraz už prázdne tie presklené dvere.
The bath and the shower were combined.
A tá kúpeľňa a sprchujúci kút, tam to bolo prepojené.
And the shower door was a sliding glass panel fitted along the top edge of the bathtub.
A vlastne tá sklená časť to bolo ako tam bola tá vaňa nejak, tak tam to bolo.
Že na vani bolo smerom z vane nahor bolo to oddelovacie sklo, ktoré sa tým klznutím posunulo.
Right. You should just do it. So Prabhupada had slid it shut.
A Prabhupada to proste posunul.
And the entire sheet of glass had simply fallen out.
A celá tá tabula jednoducho vypadla.
By Krishna's mercy, it had toppled outwards and not inside on top of it.
Ale Krišnou milosťou to padlo na tú stranu vonku, nie smerom na ňu.
He was highly displeased and strongly criticized the shoddy workmanship.
On bol veľmi z toho, ako bol veľmi nepotešený a kritizoval.
I fetched Brisha Kapi to get things cleaned up.
Takže ja som zavolal, aby to vyčistili.
Brisha Kapi is the temple president.
Chrámového prezidenta, aby to vyčistili.
And Prabhupada ordered him to have it fixed properly.
A Prabhupada im dal pokyn, aby to správne urobili.
Okay, one last pastime for bathing with Prabhupada,
A ešte posledná zábava ohľadne kúpania s
which I
Prabhupada,
mentioned yesterday.
ktorú som zmenil včera.
This was in the sea at Jagannath Puri.
A to bolo v Jagannath Puri.
Because Satsvarup Maharaj has also written about this in the Prabhupada Lila Amrita.
A Satsvarup Maharaj o tom napísal tiež Prabhupadovi Lilamrite.
But this is my version.
Ale toto je moja verzia.
So this was on January 26, 1977.
To bolo januári 26.
And Prabhupada had gone to Bhubaneswar about the 19th or 20th of January.
A Prabhupada išiel do Bhubaneswaru nejak 19. alebo tak nejak januára.
And we were due to stay there until February the 3rd. And Prabhupada was going to do the cornerstone laying ceremony for the new temple.
A my sme tam zostávali do 3. februára a Prabhupada tam mal vykonať tú ceremóniu toho základného kameňa.
And that was on Nityananda's appearance day, which was February the 2nd, I think.
A to malo byť na zjavenie Nityanandu, čo myslím, že bolo 2. februára.
So whilst we were there, some of the sannyasis were feeling that this land that we had in Bhubaneswar was not very nice.
A zatiaľ, čo sme tam boli, tak niektorí z sannyasinov mali pocit, že tá zem, ktorú sme mali v Bhubaneswari, nebola veľmi pekná.
And if we were going to build a temple, why not build one in Puri?
A že ak my ideme tam teda stavať chrám, prečo radšej ho nestať v Puri.
So Prabhupada had actually decided that he was never going to go back to Jagannath Puri.
Ale Prabhupada sa v skutočnosti rozhodol, že on nikdy už nepôjde späť do Jagannath Puri,
Unless his disciples were going to be allowed into the temple.
pokiaľ jeho žiakom nebude dovolené vstúpiť do chrámu.
But after we talked, and then the idea came up of building our own temple in Puri, then he said, all right, so let's see if there's some land available.
Ale potom, ako sme povedali a bol tam ten nápad, že by sme postavili chrám niekde pri tom hlavnom chráme, tak Prabhupada potom povedal, OK, že tak pozrite sa, či tam je niečo dostupné.
So Gagamuni had gone there, he had kind of scouted out, found 3-4 different plots of land, and then reported back to Prabhupada.
A Gargamuni tam išiel a preskúmal to a našiel zo 3 alebo 4 miesta, ktoré by boli vhodné a potom podal tomu Prabhupadovi správu.
And on the morning of January 25th, then we set out by car to go and see those places.
A ráno v januári, 26. januára sme nasadli do auta, aby sme si prezreli tých pár miest.
And the plan was we would stay there for the day and come back in the evening.
A ten plán bol, že tam zostaneme počas dňa a pôjdeme naspäť večer.
And just for a few hours we rented a room on the second floor of this hotel called the Tourist Bungalow No. 1.
A len na pár hodín sme si prenajali na druhom poschodí v hoteli nejakú miestnosť.
Tourist Bungalow No. 1.
Turistický bungalov
číslo 1.
Včera to hovoril.
Okay.
So it was just on the seashore.
A ja som bol na pobreží.
And then in the afternoon, this gentleman turned up.
A potom po obede ten gentleman sa ako to otočil.
His name was Sadashiva Rat,
A jeho meno bolo Sadashivara.
and he was a pujari from the main Jagannath temple.
A on bol pujári z toho hlavného Jagannathov chrámu.
So he was having some function the following day,
A on tam mal nejaké funkcie, mal robiť v tom nasledujúcom dni.
and he heard that Prabhupada was in the town.
A počul, že Prabhupada je v meste.
So he thought, you know, it was a good opportunity to get Prabhupada to come with his foreign disciples that will advertise his function more.
A on myslel, že to je dobrá príležitosť zavolať Prabhupádu tam so svojimi zahraničnými žiakmi a to potom celú tú príležitosť viac zreklamuje.
So Prabhupada agreed, and so we ended up staying overnight.
A Prabhupada teda súhlasil a my sme sa rozhodli tam zostať cez noc.
So then on January the 26th then,
A potom januári 26.
after breakfast and his rest, Prabhupada called me in and asked me what I thought about his bathing in the sea.
Po raňajkách tak si ma zavolal a spýtal sa ma, že čo si myslím o tom, že by sa okúpal v mori.
We all thought that it would be a very good idea,
A všetci sme si mysleli, že to je dobrý nápad,
as the seawater is supposed to be good for health.
pretože tá morská voda by mala byť dobrá pre zdravie.
And so Prabhupada decided to try it.
Tak Prabhupada sa rozhodol, že to vyskúša.
He took his massage in the bedroom,
Dostal masáž v svojej spálni
then we walked down to the beach with his towel on over his gamsha.
a potom sme išli dole na pláž a uterák mal ešte cez gamšu.
A concrete flag path, a concrete pathway,
A
took us 150 yards to within a few yards of the ocean.
a taký betónový chodník nás viedol ako k tomu oceánu.
And leaving his towel on the sand, Prabhupada carefully stepped down to the water's edge.
A zanechajúc svoj uterák na piesku, tak Prabhupada vstúpil vlastne na trošku do tej vody.
All the members of the Namhata Travelling Sankirtan Party stood around him in the water.
A všetci tí členovia Namahaty a Traveling Sankirtan skupiny tak si stáli k nemu tak tiež trošku do tej vody.
Along with Guru Kripa, Bhagavat, Jaidama, the temple president from Sydney, who had his camera, and others.
Spolu Guru Kripa a Jagavat a temple prezident zo Sydney, on mal
Jaidama.
on mal so sebou aj fotoaparát.
So as the water came in and swirled around his lotus feet,
A keď tá voda prišla a omýla mu vody jeho lotosové nohy
coming almost up to his knees,
a až takmer po jeho kolena
and then going out again,
a potom zase sa vrátila.
I began to scoop up some water and wash Prabhupada's body.
Tak ja som vtedy začal ako brať nejakú vodu a umývať Prabhupádové telo.
I began with his arm,
A začal som s jeho ramenami
and then his chest,
a potom hruďou
and then his back and head,
a potom jeho chrbtom a hlavou.
washing off the oil.
A zmýval som ten olej.
First I did it,
A najskôr som to robil ja.
then Gargamuni, Guru Kripa, and then everyone
Potom,
started to scoop up a little water and pour it onto Prabhupada's body.
potom Gargamuni, Guru Kripa a jeden za druhým začali naberať trošku vody a začali Prabhupádu umývať.
Prabhupada laughed, and it became like a transcendental abhishek.
Prabhupada sa smial a stal sa z toho transcendentálny abhišek.
As all the devotees cried, Jai Prabhupada, Haribol.
Zatiaľ, čo všetci oddaní kričali Jai Prabhupada, Haribol.
Prabhupada scooped some water and rinsed his mouth out.
Prabhupada si nabral trošku vody a oplachol si ústa.
And as he spat it out,
A ako to vyplul,
Guru Kripa reached forward and caught some,
a Guru Kripa niečo zachytil
and immediately drank it,
a okamžite to vypil,
even though it was seawater.
hoci to bola voda z mora.
Prabhupada saw him and laughed in appreciation.
A Prabhupada to videl a začal sa smiať a ocenil to.
The whole thing reminded me of the water sports of Lord Chaitanya that he had in Puri with his devotees.
A toto mi pripomenulo tie zábavy v oceáne, ktoré mal pán Chaitanya so svojimi oddanými.
After about 10 minutes of being in the water, Prabhupada came out.
A zhruba potom, ako asi 10 minút bol Prabhupada v tej vode, tak vyšiel.
Then he changed into his cloth and went back to the hotel.
A premenil si šaty a išiel späť do hotela.
Okay, so I'm going to finish there.
Takže ja to tu ukončím.
And then we're going to set up and then I'll show you a few slides from the Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Calcutta.
A my toto teraz nejak zapneme a ja vám chcem ukázať so pár slajd.
So whilst we're setting up, everybody, if you like, you can stand up and stretch.
Takže zatiaľ, kým to my pripravíme, tak môžete sa postaviť a trošku ponaťahovať.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Ukazoval som to minulý rok, keď som prišiel do centra v Bratislave.
There's been a lot of interesting stuff that's happened since then.
Ale odvtedy sa udialo veľa zaujímavého.
So this is our center. This is in South Calcutta.
Toto je naše centrum v Južnej Kalkate.
It's bigger than the building looks here.
A je to väčšie ako to tu vyzerá.
Looking from the side there, you can see the upper floors. That's the guest house.
Zozadu vidíme tie horné poschodia, to je dom pre hostí.
And towards the front of the building is where the library is.
A k predu budovy tam je knižnica.
The project was begun by myself and Pranava Prabhuda.
A ten projekt bol založený mnou a
Pranava is from Sweden.
Pranava je zo Švédska.
2 years ago he got his PhD. His thesis was on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
2 roky dozadu dostal PhD titul a jeho práca bola his thesis was
His thesis was on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
A jeho práca bola Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
He was awarded a prize by Helsinki University.
Bol odmenený, dostal cenu od Helsinskej univerzity
for writing the best PhD thesis for the whole of Scandinavia for that year.
Napísal najlepšiu prácu v Škandinávii za ten rok.
So he speaks 7 languages.
Hovorí 7 jazykmi.
And he reads 10.
A prečíta, tak porozumie z čítania 10
So
jazykov.
he's our academic director.
Je našim takým akademickým riaditeľom.
And I take care of the general running of the place.
A ja mám na starosti všeobecné
The general running of the center.
bežný chod toho centra.
So we opened June 30th, 2009, so that's just over 3 years ago.
Otvorili sme 30. júna 2009, 3 roky dozadu.
Jayapataka Maharaj, Bhakti Churu Maharaj were there.
Boli tam aj Jayapataka Maharaj, Bhakti Churu Maharaj.
And the gentleman in white is Mr. Shyam Sukha. He's the donor of the building.
A ten gentleman v bielom je Shyam Sukha, je vlastníkom budovy. Daroval tú budovu.
The donor of the building, yeah. This is what we began with.
S týmto sme začali.
It was kind of like a more or less derelict hall.
Derelict?
Derelict means disused.
A bola to ako nepoužívaná sieň.
And after 6 months, this is what we have.
A po 6 mesiacoch sme mali toto.
We replaced everything, all the windows, the electrics, everything.
Všetko sme vymenili, elektriku, všetko proste okna.
So this is fully air conditioned. We can hold about 12 to 15,000 books on the shelves.
A máme 12 až 15 tisíc kníh, všetko je tam klimatizácia.
And we have our own computer servers, etc.
A máme vlastnú taký ten počítačový servis.
So we started with about 4,000 books. Now we have about 15.
Začali sme s 4 000 knihami, teraz máme 15 000.
Plus we've started this digital manuscript program.
A začali sme aj s programom zahrňajúcim tie digitálne rukopisy.
So new acquisitions this year, one of the most important ones was the personal archive of Sadaputa Prabhu.
Tie nové také predsavzatia, také ciele boli Sadaputa Prabhu a osobné archívy.
That's Sadaputa sitting down next to the small boy.
A Sadaputa Prabhu sedí vedľa malého chlapca.
With the black hair? With the black hair? Is it him?
Yeah, in white.
In white and orange jumper.
Yeah. He had a PhD from Cornell University
Cornellová univerzita mu udelila PhD
in mathematics.
v matematike.
This was taken in '76 in Washington.
Toto sa fotilo v Washingtone v roku 1976.
And seated on the floor of the original members of the Bhaktivedanta Institute.
Je to fotené na pôvodnom pozemku Bhakti Vedantového inštitútu.
So, Sadaputa, his most important work, in my opinion, was the Vedic cosmography and astronomy.
Najdôležitejšou prácou Sadaputa Prabhu bola vedecká kozmografia a astronómia.
This was published in 1989.
To bolo vydané v 1997.
And up until this book, sorry.
I just
You messed
said-
up the year.
Yeah, it's the year, I said all.
Alright.
Sorry.
I'm not going to hang you for it. It wasn't until this book came out that we actually felt confident that we could present the 5th canto cosmology in the Mayapur temple.
Až do vydania tejto knihy sme si mysleli, že nebudeme schopní prezentovať ten Bhaktivedantov do centrum.
Kozmológiu podľa 5. spevu. Ako je vysvetlená v 5. svete?
You may as well just do the translation. You have to jump in all the time anyway. Right? Why don't you just do it?
Okay.
Alright, we'll be quicker. Sorry.
Okay.
Takže vlastne dovtedy sme si neboli istí, že či môže v Majapurskom tom chráme môcť prezentovať kozmológiu podľa toho, ako je vysvetlená v 5. speve Šrimad Bhagavatam.
Up until this, most devotees didn't even want to know about the 5th canto.
Kým táto kniha vyšla, tak väčšina oddaných ani nechcela vôbec pozerať do toho 5. spevu.
Nobody could figure it out.
Proste nikto to nechápal.
But Prabhupada had given that order that we have to make this model of the universe based on the 5th canto.
Ale Prabhupada nám dal ten pokyn, že máme vytvoriť model vesmíru založený na 5. speve.
So Sadaputa was the one that actually cracked it for us.
No a Sadaputa to pre nás vytvoril.
So other books he did, mechanistic and non-mechanistic science, Maya, the world is virtual reality, God and science, very important books.
To sú ďalšie jeho knihy, veľmi dôležité knihy ako mechanika, non-mechanika vedy, Mája, svet ako virtuálna realita a ďalšia kniha sa nazýva Boh a veda.
And unfortunately he left his body in 2008.
Na nešťastie opustil v roku 2008 telo.
But at the beginning of January this year, we actually received his entire personal archive.
Ale na začiatku januára tohto roku sa nám podarilo získať všetky jeho osobné archívy.
These are some samples: ancient India, astronomy and science, world culture and science, contemporary science.
Toto sú nejaké vzorky z ako staroveká India, astronómia a veda, svetová kultúra a veda a súčasná veda.
And this very important book, Alien Identities, based on his paranormal studies.
No a toto je tiež veľmi dôležitá kniha, ktorá sa nazýva Mimozemské identity, alebo mimozemské bytosti.
Everybody's read this book?
Čítali si všetci túto knihu?
No, very important book.
Je to
You
veľmi
must read
dôležitá
this.
kniha. Mali by ste si ju prečítať, tá kniha je založená na jeho výskumu.
He does a study of all the modern UFO phenomena.
Takže on robí štúdiu všetkých moderných fenoménov.
And then he compares that to the descriptions, you know, in the Srimad Bhagavatam.
No a potom to porovnáva s popismi v Šrimad Bhagavatame.
Like one example is the abduction of Aniruddha from his palace in Dwarka.
A ako jedno z nich je napríklad únos Anirudhu z jeho palácu v Dvarake.
So the daughter of Banasura, she wanted to marry him.
Banasurová dcera sa za neho chcela vydať.
And her maidservant was a yogini.
A jej slúžka bola joginka.
So she abducted, whilst he was asleep, she abducted Aniruddha and transported him through the spaceways to the palace of Banasura.
Takže kým Aniruddha spal, tak ho ukradla a preniesla ho cez vzdušné dráhy do Banasurovho palácu.
And when he woke up, he was in a completely different place.
A keď sa zobudil, tak zistil, že je na úplne inom mieste.
So this is very similar to the descriptions of alien abductions, many of which have been reported in the last 50 years.
A toto bolo veľmi nápodobné tým únosom, ktoré spravili mimozemšťania. Mnoho z nich bolo nahlásené za posledné roky.
The idea is that what we read in the Bhagavatam 5,000 years ago,
takže to, čo sme čítali v Bhagavatame pred 5000 rokmi,
that kind of phenomena is still going on nowadays.
tak podobné fenomény sa dejú aj dnes.
It's not that it just happened thousands of years ago, it's still going on.
Nie je to tak, že by sa to stalo niekedy pred 1000 rokmi, ono sa to stále deje.
So, anyway, another new acquisition, this is Achyuta Prabhu on the left. He personally has, over the last 20 years, collected about 11,000 books.
Takže toto tiež sa nám podarilo získať, tam vľavo je Achyuta Prabhu, ktorý za posledné roky získal viac ako 11 000 vedských kníh.
And he has nowhere to put them.
Sorry? He has?
He has nowhere to put them.
A nemá ich už kam dať.
He's our librarian.
On je náš knihovník.
So we've allowed him to put his collection on our shelves.
Tak sme mu dovolili, aby svoje zbierky uložil na naše poličky.
And we're adding them to the catalogue.
A my ich pridávame do katalógu.
Although right now they still belong to him.
Aj keď ešte stále patria jemu.
But he's got a lot of really important stuff.
Ale mám mnohé veľmi dôležité
He's
vecičky.
got a section on Vedic sciences and mathematics.
Takže sú tam sekcie, čo sa týka vedskej vedy a matematiky.
Jagannath Puri,
Taktiež ako Jagannath
all
Puri.
different forms of kirtan.
Rôznymi druhmi kirtanu.
He's got 420 commentaries on Vedanta Sutra,
Má 402 komentárov na Vedanta Sutru.
200 plus versions of the Gita.
Vyše 200 verzií Bhagavad Gita.
So for a scholar, these are all important research.
A pre vedca toto je všetko dôležitý materiál.
And a lot of rare stuff he's got as well.
A lot of...
Rare.
A má aj veľa veľmi nezvyčajných prác.
This is the Chaitanya Chandrodaya from 1885.
A toto je Chaitanya Chandrodaya z roku 1885.
Many of these books were only ever published once and then never again.
Mnohé z týchto kníh boli vydané iba raz a potom už nikdy.
These are a few more. This is their very rare Vaishnav titles.
Toto je zo pár viac veľmi nezvyčajných vajšnavských titulov.
So we're going to make an arrangement to try to pay him a certain amount of money every year and gradually buy his whole collection.
Takže my sme sa tak dohodli, že každý rok mu zaplatíme určitú čiastku, finančnú čiastku a budeme tak odkupovať jeho knihy.
Then what we started with was this personal collection of Sundarananda Vidyavinod.
No, s čím sme začali, bola osobná zbierka Sundarananda
That's him
Vidyavinoda.
on the right, the taller man.
Je to ten vysoký muž vpravo.
There's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati at the bottom.
Tam dole je Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
And Sundarananda was the custodian of the main library of the Gaudiya Math, which was housed at the Bagbazar temple.
Takže Sundarananda, on bol hlavný knihovník v Bagbazare.
It was literally the personal library of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
Doslovne bol osobný knihovník Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswatiho.
And after he disappeared,
Potom čo opustil telo,
then there was a big fight
tak vznikol veľký boj
between the devotee on the left, that was Ananta Vasudeva,
medzi oddaným vľavo, to je Ananta Vasudev,
and Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, who had control of the Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur.
a Bhaktivilas Maharaja, ktorý mal na starosti Chaitanya Mat v Mayapure.
And Ananta Vasudeva had control of the Bagbazar Mat.
A Ananta Vasudev, on mal pod kontrolou Bagbazar Mat.
And at one point Tirtha Maharaj's men raided the Bagbazar temple.
A v jednom bode tento Tirtha Maharaj,
They raided the
tak
temple.
oni napadli ten chrám
and they stole a portion of the library.
a ukradli časť tej knižnice.
So it seems that Sundarananda then removed the whole library to his home.
No a potom tento Sundarananda celú knižnicu presťahoval k sebe domov.
And he kept them.
A tam to uschovával.
And he died in about 61 or 62.
Zomrel v roku 61 alebo 62.
And the whole library was just sitting in his house for about 50 years, just rotting away.
A v jeho dome celá tá knižnica stála asi 50 rokov a už tam tak začala odhnívať.
Then Pranava found out about it when he was doing his research for his PhD. Eventually we got the entire library.
A Pranava, keď robil výskum pre svoje PhD, tak to zistil a nakoniec sa nám podarilo získať tú knižnicu.
So some really rare stuff in this.
Takže to sú skutočne nezvyčajné veci.
These are two original prints of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and precepts.
Takže toto sú dva pôvodné výtlačky Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a jeho život a kázanie.
So 1896, that was when this book was sent out to all the major universities in the world.
Takže v roku 1896 bola táto kniha rozoslaná na všetky hlavné univerzity vo svete.
You can see on the left-hand picture there at the bottom, 1896.
Takže vidíte tam na tom obrázku vľavo dolu, že je tam napísané
So Prabhupada's
1896.
birth year.
To je rok, kedy sa narodil Prabhupada.
Very important book.
Veľmi dôležitá
And this is
kniha.
the original print.
Toto je ten pôvodný výtlačok.
This is an original photo of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji.
Toto je originálna fotka Srila Jagannatha Dasa
This
Babajiho.
literally fell out of the pages of a book.
A doslovne vypadla ako list z jednej knihy, ako
And
stránka
it's
knihy.
an actual photograph of him when he was about 120 years old.
To je tá pôvodná fotografia, ktorú spravili, keď mal 120 rokov.
In fact, we think it's the only photograph of him.
A myslím si, že je to jeho jediná fotografia.
Then the Gaudiya Mat were publishing all these different periodicals throughout the 1920s and 30s.
A v 20. a 30. rokoch Gaudiya Mat vydávali mnohé tieto magazíny.
So he had collected every single issue and had them bound up into volumes.
Takže on pozbieral všetky čísla a dali zviazať do formy knihy.
This is the Harmonist. You can see if you start on the right, it's 1930 to 31, then 31 to 32, 32 to 33, 34 to 35, like that.
Ak vidíte, ak pozriete sa na to správa, tak vidíte, ako to začína 1930, 31, 32, 30, 33 a tak ďalej.
And this is the Nadia Prakash, the daily newspaper they were producing.
Toto je Nadia Prakash, to boli denné noviny, ktoré vtedy vydávali.
This is a newspaper size.
Mali rozmer novinových, ako noviny.
And it was a single sheet folded in half, so there's 4 pages.
Takže bol to jednoduchý list, ktorý bol na poli zložený, to znamená, že mal
And
4
practically
strany.
the whole history of the Gaudiya Mat is mentioned in these periodicals.
A v týchto žurnáloch sú spomenuté celé dejiny Gaudia Matu.
This is the Bhagavad, which was a Hindi journal. This is from 1931.
A toto je Bhagavad, čo boli noviny v hindštine, je to z roku 1931.
Then we found this book, Bibliotheca Indica.
Našli sme túto knihu, Bibliotheca Indica.
It attracted attention because it's got 3 distinct layers in it.
A zaujalo nás to, pretože to má 3 rôzne vrstvy.
And when we looked at it, the first layer was the Kaushitaki Brahmana Upanishad from 1861.
No a keď sa pozrieme na to vľavo, tak vidíme, že to je Kaushitaki Brahmana Upanishada z roku 1861.
Second section was the Shankara Vijay from 1868.
A druhá je Shankara Vijay z roku 1868.
Neither of which are particularly interesting for us.
Ani jedna z nich neboli pre nás obzvlášť
But the
zaujímavé.
third section was a blank section.
Ale tá tretia časť bola prázdna časť.
And it had all these newspaper clippings stuck in it.
A boli tam naskladané výstrižky z novín.
And it says thoughts on popular topics or occasional notes by Babu Kedarnath Dutt, Deputy Collector and Magistrate. That means, of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
No a to boli vlastne myšlienky a také obľúbené témy a také priebežné ako poznámky od Babu Kedarnatha, čo bol samozrejme Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
This is a sample, famous poem about Haridas Thakur.
Je to veľmi známa báseň o Haridas Thakurovi.
At the bottom there's an explanation that it says Haridas was the son of a Qazi.
No a dole je tam napísané vysvetlenie a je tam spomenuté, že Haridas bol synom Kaziho.
And he lived a few miles from Delhi.
A žil niekoľko mil od Delhi.
When he took up Vaishnavism,
a keď prešiel na Vaishnavizmus,
all the Qazis and others met together and ordered him to be beaten very hard in the bazaars of Delhi.
Tak všetci, keď on prešiel na Vaishnavizmus, tak všetci Kaziovia sa stretli a dali príkaz, že musí byť zbitý na všetkých tržišťach v Delhi.
When he was being cruelly beaten, he was praying to God that his enemies might be pardoned.
A keď bol surovo bitý, tak sa modlil k Bohu, aby jeho nepriatelia, aby im bolo odpustené.
So there's 10 verses in that. You can see all the articles and poems are all signed as Sharagrani Vaishnav.
Tak vidíte týchto 10 odstavcov a všetky články boli podpísané podpisom Sharagrani Vaishnava.
And number 9 is the famous verse, Reason till who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread a holy life around.
9. verš je ten slávny verš, ktorý hovorí, že mieli sa ten, ktorý si myslí, že Vaishnava umiera, pretože Vaishnava žije naďalej a prostredníctvom zvuku. Vaishnava zomiera, aby žil a takto žije naďalej a rozširuje sväté meno.
And that last line, to spread a holy life around, generally we print that as to spread the holy name around.
No a tá posledná línia, tu sme vytlačili, aby sme rozšírili sväté meno.
But this is what we think is the original first printing of this poem.
Ale my si myslíme, že táto strana je skutočne pôvodný výtlačok tejto básne.
Then see on the top left it says original poetry.
Vidíte, že tam hore je napísané, že pôvodné básne.
And this is another famous poem.
A toto je ďalšia známa
Alas
báseň.
for those that spend their days in festive mirth and joy, the dazzling, deadly liquid forms their hearts for air employ. I won't ask you to translate.
No, please.
Very famous poem. And this is the first printing of it.
Takže toto je veľmi slávna báseň a to je prvý výtlačok tej básne.
And this is from 1871.
To To je z roku 1871.
Yeah, so very important. This is a verse that was personally written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
To je verš, ktorý bol osobne napísaný Bhaktivinoda Thakurom.
And there were 8 pages following that verse. This is the horoscope of his youngest son, Lalit Prasad.
A toto je 8 strán, ktoré sme tam našli a bol to horoskop jeho najmladšieho syna Lalita Prasada.
And so it seems Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also a very expert astrologer, as was his son.
Zdá sa, že Bhaktivinoda Thakur bol tiež veľký odborník v astrológii, podobne ako jeho syn.
Then this is a letter that he sent home. You can see the bottom line there, that's his signature.
No toto je list, ktorý poslal domov, vidíte, že úplne v tom spodnom riadku to je jeho podpis.
You can see the condition of these pages, they're so brittle, they just break as soon as you touch them.
Vidíte, aký je stav týchto strán, že len čo sa ich dotknete, tak sa rozpadávajú.
Then this is another sample of his handwriting.
A toto sú vzorky jeho rukopisu.
And this was a really amazing find. This is a songbook handwritten by Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself.
A toto je spevník, ktorý ručne napísal samotný Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
And it's got all of his songs in it.
A sú tam všetky jeho piesne.
Yeah. So this is in his own handwriting.
Je to jeho vlastným rukopisom.
Then a first print of his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita.
To je prvý výtlačok jeho komentáru k Bhagavad Gite.
And an original print of the Padma Purana.
A toto je pôvodný výtlačok Padma Purany.
He doesn't give his own commentary here,
Tuto on nedáva svoj vlastný komentár.
but he's gathered 7 or 8 commentaries by leading acharyas.
Ale on zhromaždil 7 alebo 8 komentárov hlavných ačariov.
And then printed them. It's all in Sanskrit.
A on to vytlačil a všetko je tu v sanskrite.
Then this one is published by the Vishva Vaishnava Raja Sabha, which was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's original organization for preaching.
Takže toto bolo vytlačené Vishva Vaishnava Raja Sabha, čo bola vlastne pôvodná organizácia Bhaktivinoda Thakura, ktorú založil na kazanie.
And now this is a sample of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's handwriting.
Toto je vzorka rukopisu Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura.
It's a bit faint, but you can see down the left-hand side of the paper there's dates.
A je to trošku vyblednuté, ale vidíte, že na tej ľavej strane vidíte dátumy.
Then this is an original print of the official biography of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
Toto je pôvodný výtlačok originálneho životopisu Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswatiho.
So this was published in 35,
Toto bolo vydané v roku 1935.
and there were meant to be 5 volumes.
In 1935, okay. A bolo to v 8 dieloch.
But somehow or another, only the first volume was ever published.
A z nejakého dôvodu vydali iba prvý diel.
And this was out of print for many, many years.
A už potom roky to netlačili.
And then we found the second volume.
Potom sme našli aj druhú časť.
And this is a series of interviews with Bhaktisiddhanta,
A toto je séria interview s Bhaktisiddhantom,
describing his life growing up as the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Ktoré opisujú vyrastujú jeho detstvo, ktoré opisujú jeho detstvo, keď vyrastal ako syn Bhaktivinoda.
And you can see his birth chart on the front page there.
A na prvej strane vidíte jeho horoskop zrodenia.
So this has never been published,
Toto nebolo nikdy vydané.
and we have 2 copies of it.
A my máme 2 kopie.
So next year we're going to get it translated and publish the whole thing as 1 volume.
Na budúci rok to necháme preložiť a obidve časti vydáme ako jednu knihu.
Then this is really important. This is the actual will of Bhaktisiddhanta
To
Saraswati.
je veľmi dôležité, to je skutočná záveď Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswatiho.
It says at the top, the last wishes of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, 31st of December 1936 at 10:30 a.m.
hore je napísané posledné prianie jeho božskej milosti Šrilu Prabhupádov 31. december 1963 o 10:30 ráno.
Number 2 is particularly important. It says advice to form a governing body of 10 to 12 persons for management of the mission's work, but Kunja Babu will manage as long as he lives.
Takže veľmi dôležitý je druhý bod, ktorý hovorí, ja vám odporúčujem, aby ste vytvorili riadiace telo 10 až 12 osôb, ktoré budú ako robiť manažment, ktoré budú riadiť prácu tejto misie, ale Kunja Bihari Prabhu by on mal manažovať dovtedy, kým žije.
Prabhupada always said that this instruction to form a GBC had been given.
Prabhupada vždycky hovoril, že toto bola inštrukcia, ktorá bola daná prvému GBC, pôvodnému GBC.
This is the original written evidence.
A toto je skutočný pôvodný písomný dôkaz.
Then we found an entire third year of printing, 1904, of the Jyoti Avid, which was astronomical periodical that they were publishing.
No toto je astrologický žurnál, alebo taký ako mesačník, ktorý bol vydávaný, ktorý bol vydaný ceny.
And you can see even then, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was using the name Siddhanta Saraswati.
A že vidíte, že už vtedy Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati v roku 1904 používal meno Siddhanta Saraswati.
And in 1918, when he took sannyas, he added Bhakti to the Siddhanta Saraswati.
A keď v roku 1918 prijal sannyas, tak tomu menu Siddhanta dal dopredu ešte Bhakti.
So this is very important for us, for the Mayapur Temple of the Vedic Planetarium.
Tieto astronomické knihy sú pre nás veľmi dôležité pri stavbe Mayapurského vedského planetária.
And it will give us very important insights into how Bhaktisiddhanta was dealing with astronomical topics.
Dá nám to veľmi hlboké vhľady o tom, ako Bhaktisiddhanta zaobchádzal s astronomickými témami.
Then also with the Jyoti Vids we found a commentary on Bhaskaracharya's commentary on the Surya Siddhanta.
Takže taktiež sme tu našli komentáre ku komentárom Bhaskara Acharyu, k jeho komentárom Surya Siddhanty.
Then this is the early renditions of what we call the Vaishnav calendar.
Takže toto sú tie prvé výtlačky k tomu, čo hovoríme, že Vaishnavský kalendár.
This is the Gaudiya Panjika from 1928.
Je to Gaudiya Panjika z roku 1928.
And then this is the first book that Bhaktisiddhanta ever published that was not astronomical or astrological.
To je prvá kniha, ktorú vydal Bhaktisiddhanta, ktorá by nebola astronomická alebo astrologická.
Called Bangay Samagikata, which means the social life of Bengal.
A nazýva sa Bangay Samagikata, čo znamená spoločenský život Bengalska.
And this is an original print from 1899.
Bol to pôvodný výtlačok z roku 1899.
Then this is a first print of the Navadvip Mahatmya, printed on the wrong press, the Gaudiya Printing Works in 1925.
Takže toto je prvý výtlačok Navadvip Mahatmya, ktorý bol vytlačený ako prvý výtlačok na vlastnej tlačiarni, ktorú vlastnil Gaudiya Mat.
This is interesting. This is a map of Nadia, government map.
To je veľmi zaujímavé, je to vládna mapa
You can
Nadia.
see it says season 1917 to 1918.
Takže vidíte, že je tam písané, že je to z roku 1917.
That's the Nadia district.
Tak to vyzeral okres Nadia.
And there you see Navadvip in the bottom left.
Tam vidíte, že dole je Navadvip a dole vľavo.
The Ganga on the left, the Jalangi on the right.
Takže vľavo je Ganga, vpravo Jalangi.
And in the middle there it says Miyapur Bill.
No a vidíte, že tam v strede je napísané Miyapur Bill.
So that's the old spelling of Mayapur, Miyapur.
A to je starodávne hlaskovanie Mayapuru, Miyapur.
And you can see practically there were no dwellings there at that time.
Viete, že v tej dobe tam neboli žiadne obydlia.
Now the whole area, of course, is becoming like a town.
Tak celé to okolie, z toho ešte nebolo mesto.
So that's Mayapur in 1918, the year that Bhaktisiddhanta took sannyas.
Takže takto vyzeral Mayapur v roku 1918, v roku, keď Bhaktisiddhanta prijal sannyas.
So that's just a little glimpse of, a few of the rare things that we found.
Takže to bolo len pár náhľadov na niektoré z tých špeciálnych, nezvyčajných vecí, ktoré sme našli.
So naturally we want to start publishing.
Samozrejme, chceli by sme to začať aj vydávať.
We'll have 2 imprints, one for academics, one for the general public and devotees.
Takže budeme mať 2 výtlačky, jednu pre akademikov a jednu pre bežných ľudí a oddaných.
And this is going to be the first item that we publish, the personal diary of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
A toto vydáme ako prvé, je to osobný denník Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswatiho.
It runs from 1904 to 1936.
Je to od roku 1904 až do roku 1936.
And nobody knew this existed.
Nikto nevedel, že takéto niečo existovalo.
Nobody in the Gaudiya Mat had ever heard of this.
Nikto v Gaudiya Mate o niečom takom nikdy nepočul.
Sundarananda was keeping it in his library and then it was just forgotten.
Sundarananda to držal